I don't know who needs to hear this, but if a voice ever whispers your name when you're alone, don't answer it. I did once, and that voice hasn't stopped following me since. Even now, it never stops. That night felt wrong before anything even happened. Not frightening, just heavy. A kind of heaviness that settles on your shoulders when you walk into a room that hasn't been lived in for a long time. Even though it was my own apartment, it felt unfamiliar the moment I opened the door. I remember standing there for a second, keys still in my hand, wondering why the silence inside sounded so thick. There's silence, and then there's an absence of sound. This was the second kind. No passing cars outside, no neighbors, no fridge hum, just stillness. Like the entire place was holding its breath. I tried to shake the feeling off. I dropped my keys on the table. The sound echoed louder than usual, as if the apartment swallowed noises slower than before. I made tea just to create some normal sounds, anything to break the strange quiet. The kettle hissed, the cup clinked, and I felt a bit better. Then I sat down, leaned back, and finally exhaled. That's when it happened. At first, it felt like a breath passed by my ear. Very faint, almost like a soft breeze. Before I could even process that sensation, I heard it. A whisper. Soft. Close. Almost touching my skin. It said my name.
After that first whisper, I tried convincing myself it was nothing, a trick of exhaustion, an echo, maybe even the wind. I repeated those excuses so many times they almost felt believable. But the next morning proved I was lying to myself. I was brushing my teeth when I heard it again. Not loud, just a faint, drawn-out whisper of my name. It sounded like it came from somewhere between the bathroom door and the hallway. I spat out the toothpaste, turned off the tap, and waited. The apartment was silent again. Too silent. A silence that felt like it was listening back. I stayed still for a full minute, heart pounding hard enough to feel it in my fingertips. Nothing else happened. So, again, I told myself I imagined it. But my hands were shaking, and deep down, I already knew the truth. The voice wasn't a one-time incident. It had followed me into a new day. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Every time I was alone, every time I let my guard down, every time my mind drifted even slightly away from the moment, the whisper would return. In the kitchen, as I sliced bread, soft, close, just a quiet, breathy call of my name. In the shower, water running over my face, the whisper echoed through the steam, like someone speaking from behind the curtain. When I walked down the hallway late at night, with only the dim lights on, the voice would drift over my shoulder. Never loud, never urgent, just present. It was like being followed by a shadow I couldn't see.
By the end of the week, the whisper wasn't just a strange, unsettling sound anymore. It had become part of the rhythm of my day, an unwanted, invisible companion that followed me through every quiet moment. But something changed. Something small at first, something that slipped under my sanity like a thin crack. The voice started forming new words. The first time it happened, I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on work. My laptop screen glowed in the dim light, and the only sound in the room was the clicking of keys. I took a small break, leaned back in the chair, closed my eyes just for a second, and that's when I heard it. Not my name, not a whisper of breath. This time it said, "Found you." 2 words, soft, stretched out, dragged across the air like a finger across fogged glass. I opened my eyes instantly. My heart kicked hard in my chest. I didn't move, couldn't move. I whispered to myself, "No, I didn't hear that. I imagined it." But the voice didn't care what I believed, because that night, it came back. I was lying in bed, trying not to think about anything, trying not to give my mind any empty space where the whisper could slip in. But silence always finds a way. It seeps into the gaps between thoughts. And as the room settled into darkness, the whisper floated across the mattress like cold air. This time it said, "I'm here." Not loud, not aggressive, just a statement, as if it had been waiting for the right moment to announce itself. The worst part? It wasn't coming from one corner of the room. It wasn't coming from behind the door. It wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from right beside the bed. As if something unseen was sitting on the floor, head tilted, mouth inches from my ear, just waiting for me to acknowledge it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt a presence watching me, not moving, not shifting, just existing there in the dark. You don't need to see something to know it's there. The human mind senses danger long before the eyes do. And that night, my mind screamed warnings nonstop. Over the next few days, the whispers kept getting closer. Not louder this time, but closer. The distance between me and the voice kept shrinking like invisible steps closing in on me. Sometimes it felt like it was speaking right behind my shoulder. Other times it sounded like it was lying under the bed. Once, I swear the voice echoed from the inside of my closet, even though it was completely empty. Every new whisper came with a shift in the air, a subtle current like breath brushing against my skin. The whisper was no longer drifting through the apartment. It was circling me, studying me, measuring the space between us, and slowly erasing it. Something else happened too. The voice wasn't soft all the time. Sometimes it dropped into a lower tone, a tone that vibrated slightly, like something too close to my ear. Other times it stretched the words, as if struggling to shape them, as if learning how to speak using human sound. I realized something terrifying. The whisper wasn't just following me. It was approaching me, tracking me, closing in on me day by day. And one night, it came close enough that I could feel the warmth of breath on my skin. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything crossed a line. The moment the voice decided I was ready, or vulnerable enough for whatever came next. The weeks of whispering were just the beginning. The voice wasn't haunting the apartment anymore. It was haunting me. I held out longer than most people probably would. For days, I ignored the whispers, pretended not to hear them, pretended they weren't getting closer every night. But silence is pressure. Pressure builds. And one night, that pressure finally broke me. It happened around 3 a.m., the hour where the world feels the thinnest, where sound travels differently, where shadows stretch a little too far. I wasn't asleep. I hadn't been able to sleep for days. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, eyes burning, body exhausted, mind spiraling. Every small creak in the room felt like the final warning before something stepped out of the dark. Then it whispered again, right beside my ear. My name. Not the soft version I'd heard earlier. This one was clearer. Too clear. Like someone crouched next to the bed, leaning inches from my face. Something inside me snapped. I didn't turn. I didn't sit up. But my voice, shaking, raw, tired, broke the silence. "What do you want?" I whispered. The moment the words left my mouth, the room changed. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't slow. The silence that followed wasn't natural. It was total. A vacuum. A sudden swallowing of all background noise. No hum of electricity, no distant traffic, no ticking, not even the faint sound of my own breathing. The air froze. The temperature dropped so sharply my skin prickled. And then it happened. A long, cold breath brushed the back of my neck. Not imagined, not a draft, a breath. Slow, purposeful, almost curious. My entire body seized up. My fingers curled into the bedsheet so tightly I felt the fabric stretch. Every instinct told me not to move, not to turn around, not even to blink. Then the voice spoke again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was clear. Soft, but unmistakable. A voice formed too close to my skin to be human. Finally, a pause, a second breath. "You hear me." My heart hammered so hard it felt like it would burst to my ribs. The voice wasn't in my head. It wasn't drifting through the room. It wasn't echoing off walls. It was right behind me. Right there. Close enough that if I moved, if I tilted my head even slightly, my face would collide with whatever was breathing softly into my hair. I didn't turn. Couldn't turn. Fear does strange things to your body. It can make you run, or scream, or freeze. I froze so completely that even my eyelids refused to blink. The voice didn't say anything else. It didn't move. It didn't breathe again. It just waited. Waited to see what I would do, now that I had acknowledged it. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like hours. My mind screamed at me to run, to get up, to do something. But I stayed frozen, trapped in the moment I had created with one stupid, exhausted question. What do you want? Those words opened something, invited something, allowed something. Because after that night, the voice changed. It didn't behave like a distant presence anymore. It behaved like something that had been given permission. Like it was no longer bound by whatever thin barrier that had been keeping it at a distance. By speaking back to it,
I didn't just respond to a whisper. I answered a call, and it understood that. It understood it perfectly.
After the night I spoke back, something in the apartment changed. Not physically. Nothing moved, nothing opened, nothing broke. It was the air itself. Heavier, thicker, like walking through a place that didn't fully belong to me anymore. But the worst part started 2 days after that night. The first time I noticed it, I didn't even understand what I was seeing. I was standing in the hallway, getting ready to leave for work. The morning sun came through the window, casting my shadow across the floor. I bent down to tie my shoelaces, and my shadow didn't bend with me. At first, I thought I was tired. I blinked a few times, stared again. My shadow was standing upright, still, tall, rigid, even though my body was crouched near the floor. I slowly straightened myself back up, muscles trembling. Only then did my shadow finally move, delayed, like it needed a moment to catch up, like it was remembering what it was supposed to do. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound stuck in my throat. Shadows don't lag. Shadows don't hesitate. Something was wrong. That night, it got worse. I went to the bathroom and turned on the light. My reflection looked normal, tired, pale, anxious, but normal. But behind me, on the floor tiles, my shadow stretched longer than it should have. Not by a little, by feet. Long enough that it reached the corner of the room, even though the light was directly above me. I lifted my arm. My shadow lifted its arm a second too late, not matching my speed, not matching my angle. It moved like it was learning how. I backed up slowly, heart racing, and the long shadow dragged across the tiles as if it were physical, as if it had weight. That's when I noticed something else. There was another shadow, a second one, faint at first, but darker the longer I stared at it. It stood right behind me, not touching, not overlapping, just standing, tall, slender, neck slightly bent like it was leaning forward to hear better. And the moment I realized what it was, the moment my eyes locked onto it, the bathroom light flickered. The second shadow didn't flicker. My stomach twisted. My hands went numb. When I turned around, terrified, ready to see something standing behind me, nothing was there. Just the empty bathroom. Just silence. But the second shadow stayed on the floor behind me, perfectly still, watching. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my room, lights on, staring at the floor, watching every movement my shadow made, listening for the whisper. Hours passed. At some point, exhaustion pulled me under for a few seconds, just a few seconds, and when I opened my eyes again, my shadow was wrong. It was standing next to the bed, not attached to me, not on the floor following my body's outline. It was standing, as if upright on its own, its head turned toward me. I swear its edges were breathing, expanding and contracting softly, like lungs struggling through darkness. My skin crawled. A cold wave rolled down my spine. That's when the whisper came again, right behind my ear. But this time, it didn't say words. It made a long, slow exhale, like something savoring the moment. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. And somewhere in that thick, heavy silence, I realized the truth. The thing whispering to me, the thing breathing down my neck, the thing I answered that night, it had finally found a shape. Not a full one, not yet, but a shadow, a silent, patient outline was the first thing it claimed. And it was getting bolder, more confident, more visible.
The voice was no longer just a voice. It was learning how to exist.
The next night, the house felt wrong. It was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that feels empty. It was a quiet that felt watched. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling when I heard it again. Not a whisper, not a breath, a voice. Soft, slow, sliding through the walls like it was made of smoke. It said my name. Not loud, just close. Close enough that I could feel the vibration inside my chest. I froze. I didn't even blink. The voice came again, this time from the other side of the room. Then the other, then above me, then behind me. No footsteps, no movement, just the same voice, shifting from wall to wall, like something crawling inside the house. At first it whispered, then it mimicked. It repeated my breathing, my heartbeat, even the way I swallowed. It was copying me, studying me. Then it said, "You're awake." I sat up shaking, my blanket still clutched in my hands. The walls answered before I could. "Don't look for me. I'm already looking at you." The drywall behind me made a soft cracking sound. Something was pressing outward from inside the wall. Not punching, not scratching, just pushing, like a face trying to break through. I could see the outline, a forehead, a nose, a mouth stretched too wide, and eyes that bulged through the plaster, like something desperate to see daylight. Then the voice shifted tone, no longer soft. It became excited, hungry. "Finally, you're listening to me." The wall bulged again, harder this time. Hairline cracks spread across the paint. Dust fell from the ceiling. I backed toward the door, but the voice followed, traveling through the entire house like the walls were breathing. "Where are you going? Why are you leaving? I'm not done talking." Every surface vibrated. The floorboards, the pipes, even the glass in the window. It felt like the whole house had a throat and it was speaking through it. Then, just as I reached for the doorknob, the voice whispered something so quiet, I almost thought I imagined it. "If you open that door, I'll come out." And the wall behind me exhaled.
I didn't open the door. My hand froze on the knob, trembling so hard I could hear the metal clicking against my fingernails. The voice, the thing, whatever lived in the walls, it was waiting for me to make the wrong move. The house had gone silent again. Not peaceful, not calm. Silent like something was holding its breath. I stepped back slowly, trying not to make a sound. Every floorboard felt like a trap. Every shadow felt like it was leaning toward me. Then, a soft tapping started behind the wall next to me. Just one tap, then another, then a long, dragging sound like something pulling its nails across the inside of the wall. I backed into the living room. The tapping followed me. One step, tap. Another step, tap, like it was walking in sync with me. Then the voice returned, but this time it didn't whisper. It spoke clearly, like it was inches away. "Why are you running from your own house?" I spun around, heart racing. Nothing there, just the empty room. Or at least I hoped it was empty. The lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the bulbs dimmed to a sick orange glow, like the house was breathing through electricity. I backed toward the center of the room. That's when I saw it. The wall behind the TV began to swell outward as if something inside was pushing harder than before. Cracks shot across the plaster like spider webs. Then another wall bulged out. Then another. All around me, the house shifted and flexed like something inside was stretching its limbs. The voice spoke from every wall at once. "I'm tired of hiding." A deep, grumbling groan moved through the structure, the sound of wood straining, nails bending, beams twisting. The entire house shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The door hinges squealed. Pictures fell to the floor and shattered. Somewhere behind me, drywall split open with a sharp crack. The sound of tearing, stretching, like skin being pulled apart. I didn't wait to see what was coming. I ran. But right as I reached the hallway, the walls on both sides pushed inward, narrowing the space, squeezing the corridor like a throat closing. The house wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it was trying to keep me inside. Then the voice boomed through the floorboards with rage I'd never heard before. "Stop running. I'm not done with you." My knees buckled, the house groaned again, a low animal sound as every light burst at once, plunging everything into darkness. And in that darkness, I heard breathing. Not mine, not human. Slow, heavy, coming from directly behind me. The breaking point had arrived.
Darkness swallowed the hallways so completely that I couldn't even see my own hands. The air felt thick, warm, almost wet, like I was standing inside a creature's breath. Behind me, the breathing grew heavier, slow, deep, deliberate. Like whatever had been talking, whatever had been whispering through the cracks, was finally standing out in the open. My chest tightened. I didn't move. I didn't even dare inhale loudly. Then, Kirk. A thin line of light appeared on the wall to my right. Not from a bulb, not from outside. It came from the wall opening. Plaster split down the middle, peeling apart like two lips trying to smile. Dust poured out. Fiberglass insulation fluttered down like dead snow. And then, a hand slid out. Long fingers first, too long, almost jointless, stretching outward like they were tasting the air. The hand was thin enough to look starved, yet the nails were black and curved, like claws sharpened on stone. Slowly, painfully, an arm followed, bending at angles no human limb could. I stumbled backward, but the hallway squeezed tighter, the walls pressing against my shoulders. I was trapped. The thing continued emerging. A head pushed through next. Not suddenly, but inch by inch, like it had to force itself out of a place it wasn't meant to fit. Its skull scraped against the wooden studs inside the wall. Chunks of drywall fell around it as it ripped free. No eyes. Just a smooth, pale surface where a face should have been, except for a wide, torn mouth stretching nearly from ear to ear. Mouth filled with teeth. My teeth. Hundreds of them. Small, familiar, definitely human, but arranged like a shark's. My childhood teeth. The ones that went missing. The ones I never found under my pillow. They were all in its mouth. It tilted its eyeless head toward me. And then it spoke.
Not with its mouth, not out loud. It spoke inside my skull. You invited me home that night when you answered me. The hallway lights, which were supposed to be shattered, began flickering back to life one by one, strobing the creature in slow slices of visibility. It stepped fully out of the torn wall cavity, tall, slender, bent like it had lived folded for years. Every joint cracked when it straightened. My legs refused to move. Its head twitched in sharp, jerky movements, toward me, then the walls, then the ceiling, as if listening to sounds I couldn't hear. Then it said, "You ran. You shouldn't have. Now you come with me." The floor shook as it took its first step toward me, slow, deliberate, heavy. And with every step, the house around us tightened, the walls pulsing like ribs closing around a heart. My heart. I had nowhere left to go.
The creature took another step toward me, its limbs bending like wet branches. The hallway squeezed even tighter, pressing against my rib cage, forcing me to gasp for breath. I had only one way left. Up. My eyes shot toward the attic hatch, the small wooden square in the ceiling. Barely reachable, barely visible, but it was the only direction the house hadn't closed. The creature paused, head snapping upward as if it sensed my thoughts before I could act. Its voice slid into my mind like a cold finger. "You can hide in the dark places, but the dark is where I was born." I didn't wait. I lunged at the wall, used the tight hallway as leverage, and clawed my way upward. My fingertips snagged the attic string. I yanked with everything I had. Thunk. The wooden door dropped open, hitting me on the head, but I didn't care. A ladder unfolded halfway, dangling uselessly. I jumped anyway, grabbing the edge of the hatch and hauling myself up. Below me, the creature screeched, a warped, bone-crackling shriek that rattled through my skull. I pulled myself into the attic just as its hand swiped upward, claws slicing through the air inches from my ankle. I slammed the hatch shut. Darkness. Total darkness. The attic smelled like dust, rot, and old wood. My heartbeat echoed through the cramped space. I crawled forward blindly between insulation and support beams, feeling splinters dig into my palms. Below me, something began to tap on the ceiling boards. Tap. 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 Then a low voice drifted up. "You don't know what's above you." I froze. Something else moved in the attic. Not the creature. Something smaller. Faster. Crawling in the insulation to my left. I turned slowly, trying to find its shape, but the darkness swallowed everything. Then, right beside my ear, a whisper that didn't belong to the creature. "Help me." I scrambled backward, my hand landing on something cold. Not wood. Not insulation. A bone. A small one. A human finger bone. Gnawed clean. My breath hitched. More bones surrounded me, scattered through the attic like someone had been living here. Or feeding here. The tapping below me stopped. Then, the creature's voice filled the entire attic, vibrating through the beams. "You're in my room now. Crawl deeper." The attic suddenly groaned as the roof began to bow inward, dust raining over me in thick clouds. Something scurried past my knee.
Another whisper. Don't let him find you. He eats the ones who speak back. My blood ran cold. The creature wasn't the only thing in this house.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.